Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, good whatever it is, wherever you are, whoever you might happen to be, and welcome once again to Full Fat Spoiler Chat, the show in which we, the folks at Nerd Caliber, take a look at a recent piece of nerd entertainment media and talk about it in depth about what's good about it, what's bad about it, what's ugly about it, what worked, what didn't work, and so on, which means, hence the name, we're going to be spoiling the heck out of it. We're going to be talking about it in detail. So if you have not seen tonight's topic, which is the recent movie The Suicide Squad, and you don't like spoilers, you should probably find something else to watch. If you
like
are
like Suicide, like the Suicide
like The
Squad.
Suicide Squad, yeah, go watch it. Now, having said that, if you have seen it, of course, or if you don't mind spoilers, then feel free to hang around, watch the show, join in the chat, let us know what you think about the movie, about our criticisms or comments or critiques or praise or what it might happen to be about the movie. And with that, let's get the introductions rolling. I'm Rodney Brown. I'm the editor-in-chief of Nerd Caliber, first-person shooter on Facebook as a cosplay photographer, Burley_adopter on Twitter, a couple of other places, mostly as a tech journalist. Joining me tonight is the stalwart Byron. If you would introduce yourself.
Hello, denizens of the internets. It is I, Byron McNeil, aka Byron D0, on multiple things on the internets. But tonight I am here to talk about James Gunn's latest masterpiece. If you like art, especially fan art, you should check out my Instagram, which is BD0Art. It's spelled BDZEROART.
So, Byron, I just noticed that I always keep one of these right next to me. And particularly this summer's been just miserable for it.
Oh, yeah, it's been the worst.
Anyway, Luminous, welcome to the chat. Hello, all. My gutters are working. I got new gutters. Well, congratulations. Good for you. So let's revel in the glory that is the Suicide Squad. Okay. I'm not seeing the connection, but gutters of blood, maybe. But anyway, so what is the Suicide Squad? It's a movie written and directed by James Gunn. It came out last week. It is partially based on the 2016 Suicide Squad, directed.
Which the less said about, the better.
Yeah, you know what? I think things need to be said about it. Well, certainly this needs to be said about it. Directed by David Ayer, because it carries over both characters and actors for those characters from that movie. So you can't say it's not connected. You've got Captain Boomerang, played by Jai Courtney. You've got Colonel Rick Flag, played by Joel Kinnaman. Yes. And you've got, of course, Harley Quinn, played by Margot Robbie, once again. Her third appearance, if you're German, in a DC property as Harley Quinn. Mm-hmm. The movies, both of them, are based on comics that, and again, yay for good Wikipedia entries. The team first appeared as a team with the name Suicide Squad in the Legends DC anthology series in 1959.
And it was a completely different format in those days.
Yeah, well, they were different. They were not anti-heroes or villains. And then they were essentially like the Challengers of the Unknown, the Fantastic Four without powers. So more like the Challengers of the Unknown. Basically scientists. And they were taking on, the super science, mutant nuclear horror thing, whatever. It's the late 50s. Of the week in their 6-issue run within that Legends title. It came back in 1987, revived by the writer John Ostrander, and that's where it became a team of villains, Task Force X, that was essentially as it's presented in these movies. Recruited to do suicide missions, extremely dangerous and deadly missions, because nobody really cares if the villains get killed in the process of making the mission
Yep.
succeed, but they get time off their sentences for doing it. And it has continued in that format with series running and stopping a little bit over the course of the decades up until current day. The longest running version started in 2014 after being off for a little less than a year and has been going unbroken since then.
As a brief aside, my introduction to the concept of the Suicide Squad was actually from Justice League Unlimited with the episode Task Force X.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Where which used a lot of the template from this film. You had Amanda Waller, you had Rick Flag, and you had a host of lesser known supervillains who were performing a mission on behalf of Waller.
Yeah. Did you call him Randall Flag?
No,
Rick
Flag.
Yeah. Luminous in the chat. 5 people in the chat already got blown up and the show just started. Oh, I get it. That's a joke. I'm thinking, I didn't see anybody in the chat. What are you... Oh, okay. Very good. Anyway. And so that movie, the original Suicide Squad movie in 2016, was not a big success. I mean, it made money at the box office. It wasn't a hit. And critically, it got absolutely panned. That got laid at the director's feet a lot. And then lately, as more information has come out, it seems to be more that a studio executive, after seeing both the director's cut and then a forced re-edit, gave it to the largest trailer making business, a company called Trailer Park, to re-edit the whole movie to be as exciting as their trailer was. And that seems to be the reason why we got the garbage that we did. Now, there are other things that were garbage about that first movie. So that's not the only reason, but that is apparently the predominant reason. And having said that, and I hate the concept of giving people cuts, director's cuts, and so on. But that being the case, I would kind of like to see David Ayer's original version.
Release the air cut.
Release the air cut. I mean, you got the guy who directed Training Day, Fury. Yeah, he makes good movies. So let's see what he made out of this. But that's a completely different topic. Anyway, so that's where we are now. We've got this movie. It's up, James Gunn, of course, came to DC after Disney's idiotic pulling of him from Guardians of the Galaxy 3. And then, because of a literal hatchet job performed by a right-wing group that was out to get him for his change from being a internet troll, which he admits 100%, to being a really sort of woke, socially conscious, and aware person. And eventually Disney, of course, caved, realized that they were idiots, and hired him back, and he's well into Guardians 3. But this gives us James Gunn's Guardians of the Galaxy sentiment with his Slither era gore and his Super era or Brightburn era ultra violence.
Or that sounds like a nice way of saying he had carte blanche.
Yes, it's clear he had complete, wide open ability to do whatever he wanted, with this. So let's get started. We always jump into things that we liked. So Byron, what worked for you for this? What did you like? What about it did they shoot for and achieve? And by they, I guess I should say Gunn, because this is 100% his baby.
baby.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, this goes without saying, but the humor definitely, like, the jokes land and they land and they do a perfect dismount. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, there are brief moments. There are brief pacing issues where you're kind of just like, eh. But there's so few far between, or like you're enjoying the experience so much, you can kind of just shrug it off.
Hmm.
Um, the cast as a whole, like, where do I mean, Margot Robbie, she is Holly. Uh, Idris Elba, like, I'll listen to that man read the phone book and be entertained.
Yep.
Uh, Joel Kinnaman, a man who I wasn't who I'm still sore about getting casted as RoboCop. Like, I'll never forgive him for that, but he he definitely showed his acting chops in this role. Absolutely. Um, all the beef. I'm just going to call them cameos because they didn't like they were casted and they didn't live long enough to actually have a major part in the movie.
Yeah, that's obviously if you're in this, you've seen the movie. That's most of this group right here. The ones that were walking out in front of the giant flag,
Yep.
Colonel Flag there on the right.
Ah,
He's like the only one that survived out of this entire team.
I mean, you want to talk that bait and switch, that whole bait and switch from the trailer to the film. It was like, oh boy, you guys just like the moment that happened, I'm just like, oh wow, no one's safe. And James Gunn is channeling. He's doing callbacks to his trauma days here.
Yeah, that's a good point. There are elements of this that are very trauma like. You
Yeah.
know, um, some of the very graphic natures of the deaths are very trauma like.
Yes. And even the aesthetic of a lot of these characters had like a very trauma vibe to them. Like the think like Peter Capaldi's the thinker character. Like his like his whole like costuming. It gave me some serious Toxic Avenger vibes.
It was the best way to make something look like bad makeup.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Uh the use of music was on point. Like James Gunn he has mastered the art of non-synchronous sound. Like,
Give
and
me
it
an
was just
example. I'm
it
not sure.
was hmm
Give me an example if you can
the
remember one.
the Harley Massacre.
So I get so you don't mean non-synchronous, but you mean
Like the music doesn't.
inappropriate,
Hmm.
inappropriate, or not
Yeah,
matching the
not
tone of
matching
what
the
you're
scene.
seeing.
Yes.
Okay.
Like, yeah, I mean that's what I associate with, like, how I associate it is like using pop music in a very violent scene.
Yeah. Okay. I get it. For me,
Yes.
in a production term, if it's non-synchronous, it means it doesn't match from an audio standpoint of what you're seeing. Like sounds happen before or after you see the creation of the sound.
Okay,
That would be out of sync or non-synchronous.
that's fair.
Okay.
Uh, Also, I could just gush about John Cena for hours. Like, that man has really evolved into quite the actor. Like, I'm gonna have to go back and watch like some of his other stuff from recent years, like Cop Blockers, just because just because of how phenomenal his performance was here.
Yeah.
Like he just had fun with this role, even in the promotion when he comes in the peacemaker outfit to interviews, and you're kind of just like, okay, we're doing this. It's like, and sometimes, and like I enjoy his performance so much that sometimes in my head by myself I'll quote him saying, I cherish peace with all my heart. I don't care how many men, women, and children I had to be killed to protect, to do it, to protect it. Like,
It,
that's just how phenomenal he was. And going back to the jokes, like, just like the pairing of him and Idris Elba in the opening scene, like that was just mwah, like some top tier comedy. Like that was just a great gag in and of itself.
yeah.
Oh yes. There's just so much, and there's so much more, and I'd be gushing for hours, but I don't want to hog this. I don't
Well,
want to hog
let
it.
me do some gushing.
Yes, please.
So I agree with you completely about the casting and the performances. John Cena is wonderful, and I absolutely applaud him for taking on this character that is so unrepentantly stereotyped characterization of excessive patriotism. In this case, it's peace, but you know, clearly you get what we're going to the extent that he's obviously insane.
Well, I mean, yeah, he's like textbook lawful evil.
Yeah, and the one that really yes, Idris Elba is fantastic. Of course, Margot Robbie is great. She always is. Joel Kinnaman does a great job. It's really hard to say about the first team, the Alpha team, whether or not they did a great job because probably the best job is Pete Davidson as Blackguard because he gets most to say, like when he's freaking out when somebody sort of jokingly mentions that Weasel might be a werewolf type creature that it changes into a weasel, and he's really funny for the 5 minutes he's on screen, like Lumina says.
I like Michael Rooker.
Michael Rooker is really good. So for Michael Rooker, the thing that stood out for me wasn't necessarily his performance, which was excellent. It was the very first shot of the movie. So you see you see Savant sitting, in his prison uniform on a bench, and it's kind of weird. That's like there's some sort of odd framing stuff going on around him.
Oh yeah,
and the camera pivots, and you realize it was looking at his reflection in a puddle in the prison, the sort of open air prison cell he was in at the time. And then it zooms in on him, and you see he's about to do his thing with this rubber ball. And just that shot alone, okay, this is definitely not the first movie, which is a lot of shaky, handheld action, real life police procedural drama type stuff. And this is James Gunn going, yeah, no, we're gonna play around with reality a lot.
Yes.
The like you said, the Harley fight scene, where in her mind everything is just, instead of people sprouting blood, it's all flowers going off around her and birds chirping, and or even the where's the one, the scene where Harley mentions how cool it is to walk towards your enemy while the rain is coming around you, and he just washes out the whole background and gives her that moment. And it's it's like, okay, this is a comic book movie, folks. Like, yes. Really comic book.
Also, the Starro fight was like top tier callback to Trauma.
Yeah, when you had all the the silly colored starfish things on people's faces. Yes. Lumina says it was a wonderful opening. I agree, and Harley's escape was the best action sequence ever. It was a great action sequence. I'm not, I still think top of the list for me may be the hallway fight in the first season of Daredevil. But there are others out there that are particularly, or the any of the scenes, the fights from the start to the finish of the movie, The Raid or The Raid 2.
Yes. Don't forget Dredd.
Dredd, true, good point. But anyway, my absolute favorite performance in this whole thing, and unfortunately, I couldn't find a really good close up of him. Um, is so here's the group as Starro first appears, and of course all the way to the right there is Polka Dot Man David Dastmalchian.
Yes.
I mean, I've always liked him as a character actor when he shows up, and he's always in very small roles. From the first time I think I saw him, which was in The Dark Knight, where he plays an Arkham Asylum escapee that the Joker uses. Um, and he is the funniest character in the whole thing. His situation is used for the funniest sight gags. The fact that he sees his mother as everything not only bad but good or tempting in his life is one, very funny, two, really effed up, and they
Mm-hmm.
play it hilariously. Um, and he's honestly, of all of them, he's probably one of the nicest, most tragic figures,
Yeah.
in the whole thing. Um, just outstanding, of course. And Sylvester Stallone is the voice of King Shark.
Ah,
And yes,
I
that's
loved
your hand.
him as King Shark so much.
And what a great pairing. So the guy who played John Economos, one of Waller's team in the control and monitoring system or station, also did the motion capture. Comedian Steve
Yes.
Agee, and he did the motion capture for King Shark. Um,
That was a nice little Easter egg that like to that was revealed in like various articles and videos about the movie.
right. One, that, and two, the fact that Economos is actually a character from the Suicide Squad. He is the warden of Belle Reve in the comic books.
Ooh.
Um, so yeah, I love that. I love the action. I love the comedy. Um, I love the interplay for the most part between most of the members of the team, whether it was comedic or dramatic. Um, I love the cameos. Um, Palm Clementif from Guardians
Oh,
of the Galaxy, Mantis
yes.
as the dancer in the bar where they meet the Thinker
Mm-hmm.
or singer and dancer, and of course Taika Waititi as Ratcatcher One, as the original
Yes.
Ratcatcher. Um, just, and I'm sure there are more in there that I didn't get. I think there was a guard.
Yeah, I think it was too.
Yeah, there
I
was a guard, a black man who looked so incredibly familiar, and I'm like, but I can't find that listing on IMDb. None of the people who are credited as soldado, which, the soldiers in Corto Maltese, um, ring any bells, and their pictures don't come up. So if it was a cameo, it was an uncredited one, and I don't know who it is. Um, and I give James Gunn all the credit in the world in making ultimately Starro a supremely tragic monster.
Yes.
Sure, you had to bring him down or it down, because it was destroying, this city, the capital of Corto Maltese, and it probably would have taken over the world, because that's kind of
Yeah.
what it does. But it had been captured and was being tortured tortured for 30 years
Ooh.
by the Thinker. And then has this absolutely fantastic death. It is a death monologue that is right up there with Roy Batty's. Just and shorter, so it's better for a lot of people who really don't like Roy Batty's longer monologue. But it's just wonderful. So
I like how Starro's abilities were used in this film. Like it created greater stakes for the against this creature.
yes, Yeah, he was something that, if he was allowed to send out those little spore starfish things, without stop, would have taken over the entire planet.
Yep, they'd all be zombies.
Exactly. And they did kind of give that, they gave a really good excuse, as was pointed out in the pitch meeting video, which dropped yesterday. Good excuse that once the starfish is on you, you're essentially dead. Because in the lab, you actually saw somebody had removed one and basically it had eaten a star pattern right down to their skull. Um, I really like all of that. That works wonderfully for me. Anything else? I like the fact that in this one, the music was less in your face, more often diegetic. Harley starts singing, "I ain't got nobody" or "Just a Gigolo," um, and uh, and then it becomes the song, but it's diegetic because it starts in the movie, and there's more of that instead of the, you know, and they're subtler too, or smarter, you know. Sympathy for the devil when the Joker first shows up in, you know, in Suicide Squad, the 2016. It's like, okay, yeah, I get it. There's no subtlety
Yeah.
there. And using
Sad and lonely, sad and lonely.
yeah, that was a great one. No, the Pixies. I mean, come on, any soundtrack that uses the Pixies song, win, win, win. All right. So we've gushed quite a bit. Now let's go into what didn't work. What didn't we like? What did they aim for and didn't quite hit? Byron, start us off.
Uh, if there's anything I would critique this film for, it would be its overall pacing. Like there were just like the downtime in between like the meat and potatoes of this film, where like while it wasn't like a huge detriment, when you notice it, it sticks out like a sore thumb.
Yeah, I would like Harley's extended solo movie.
Yep.
Yeah. Um, which again,
Um,
as Luminous points out, has one of the best action sequences at the end of it. You know, but yeah,
yeah, or like that's the whole like red flag scene with Harley where she's talking to the dictator dude who she ends up shooting in the chest.
right,
Yeah, I
right.
feel like that ran a little long. Because it's like, okay, cool, this is interesting, but it's like, but it ended up not playing too big of a role in the overall narrative.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess I'll comment on that now. I
Uh-huh.
think that seemed like it was an attempt to make Harley's statement. We've never seen in the DC cinematic universe yet the actual, and I don't know if it actually has been shown in the comic, the actual breakup between Joker and Harley. The only time, actually, now that I think of it, we've seen it was in the Harley Quinn cartoon series.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and this kind of gives us the catharsis that we would like to see Harley actually do.
Yep.
Like, this is clearly a stand in for the Joker in her mind.
Yeah, I was thinking that too, but I could also see how it was kind of just at the same time as well.
Yeah, yeah, no, and that's what I guess what I was getting at. It's like that was nice. It would be better if we actually saw the breakup. Yeah,
Yes.
um,
Or at least some, yeah, like maybe some juxtaposing. Maybe have like, maybe give the dictator like clown makeup in her mind.
that might be a little too subtle or too unsubtle. Too on the nose, but on the clown nose, as it were. Um,
That
keep going. Other things that you didn't like?
was really about it, honestly. The pacing issues, like there were some, but wasn't enough to take me out of the film's experience as a whole.
Yep.
Like those few scenes where the pacing slowed down while they were dull, I was willing to forgive it because I was just having too much fun with the film as a whole.
Yeah. Yeah. For the most part, I agree. So the things that I didn't like, I was a little less bothered by the pacing, although I agree. And obviously, as we talked about it, I think the whole Harley thing was um, fun on its own, but not really part of this movie. So it seems like you took a 1 hour and 50-minute movie and made it a 2 hour and 13 movie by giving Harley 20 minutes of just Harley.
Mm-hmm.
And who knows if that's contractual for Margot Robbie or or what? No idea. Um, it was interesting and exciting, but it wasn't anything to do with this story for the most part, except that it took place there and had characters that were. I guess it did move the plot along in that she killed the the dictator. So,
Yep.
But I said this in my review, and one of the things that just really kind of surprised me is that the difference between their live action or say location shooting in Panama, in Puerto Rico, to really get the sense of sort of Caribbean, Latin American, Central American, and what to me seems like painfully obvious studio, sets. It was just, and mostly it was the stuff between Team B when they're first in the jungle at night.
Mm-hmm.
Now maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they filmed that somewhere in one of those locations, and it just looks like a Gilligan's Island set. But man, it looks like a Gilligan's Island set.
Yeah.
And
No.
yeah, and that just sort of really, I was really surprised by that. In something that has so much else going for it for production values. I was initially, I guess I can't say this is a criticism. Although I was initially very surprised at the level of violence and really gratuitous, cartoonish violence. I ultimately came to realize that that's what this movie was all about, and I was fine with it, but I wasn't expecting it when I first went into it, and that kind of surprised me. The other thing that was a surprise, and I have to say this is sort of a disappointment, not so much it didn't work, because it worked. It just wasn't there, and I also mentioned this in my review on nerdcaliber.com. This movie doesn't have the heart of Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh, definitely not.
It doesn't have the heart of Deadpool or Deadpool 2, which is what it is closest to from an entertainment standpoint.
I was gonna say tonally, definitely.
Tonally, it is 100%, except without the emotional core. And that's a problem in that you don't identify with these people as much as you should, which makes it a really fun, ultimately, not forgettable, but it's not the kind of movie that's going to hang with you for a long time.
Oh no. Definitely not.
I'm sorry, you were...
No, I say definitely not, but I saw it more as brain candy.
Yeah, well, it's eye candy and brain candy, but it's definitely not heart candy. There's no, and the thing is, they have this character, or they even almost try to establish something between Bloodsport and Ratcatcher 2. Chloe, and Chloe is the only character in this whole thing who you're never given a reason why she's in prison that makes any sense compared to. A humanoid shark that eats people, a weasel that has killed 27 children, Polka Dot Man who blows people up because he thinks they're his mother, You know,
And two contract killers.
and two contract killers, at least, and an insane, peace-loving guy who carries around a Desert Eagle 50 caliber with a silencer as long as the gun.
There's a metaphor there.
Yes. Um,
Um,
although,
I,
if you saw the scene where they all get woken up at night and you see John Cena in his tidy whities, that doesn't look like there's a lot of compensation going on there for that gun. Um,
I was gonna
that's a
say
package
though,
in 3/4, folks.
oof.
Um,
One thing I wanted to point out: the actress who plays Ratcatcher 2,
yep.
she has said that she's interested in having her play a proper villain in a DC film.
I see that because this is not a proper villain. This is for
Yes,
some reason this is a not even really an
anti-hero.
anti-hero, a hero whose powers you don't like. This is the Morlocks in X-Men comics.
Oh yes,
They're heroes with powers and or physical looks that you just don't like. They're not popular kind of things, but she controls rats and saved the universe, or at least Earth. You know, that could so much have been the heart of this movie. And there's a tease of a relationship maybe building between her and Bloodsport. There's a tease of her, her morality and how it's based on the idea of even the lowest of the low can do great things. By a 2-line speech from her dad, played by Taika Waititi, and they don't take that anywhere.
I could see like when you say it like that, I could see her at home in the My Hero Academia universe.
This exactly. This is a quirk that would be perfect, in My Hero Academia. But it's an existing character that's been around for a long time in DC. They could have made an emotional core to this movie centered around Chloe, and they just didn't do it. And that's not what they were going for. James Gunn was going for a particular thing here. He didn't want to redo the Guardians of the Galaxy, where you've got Peter, his father issues, and his relationship with Gamora as the emotional core, but then also Rocket and his relationship with his adopted brother Groot as a deep emotional core. And this is a lot more fun and violent. So.
Agreed.
So again, it's not a didn't like it. It's a not having it there makes it a slightly lesser movie.
Which is more than fair.
Yeah. All right. So that said, Byron, what do you think? Was James Gunn trying to tell us anything with this? And if so, what was it? And on the scale of, oh no, we'll do that later. So what do you think the message and tone was?
I would say the message is our past fuck ups, our past mistakes don't define us. Because, especially with the character of Bloodsport, the entire time he's just like, there's no good in me. Like, anything, like the light was snuffed out in me long ago. But at the end of the day, he still went back to defend Corto Maltese, even though there was nothing in it for him.
Yep. I can see that there's definitely the idea of, redemption is possible no matter what. I think a bigger part of this is sort of that it is possible to establish good connections with other people no matter what you've done. Yeah. King Shark is basically a hero instead of a villain, or at least an anti-hero, because Chloe particularly, but others actually view him as a friend, as the movie goes on. The same thing with Polka Dot Man. People actually caring about what's going on with him, he starts connecting to them. In some cases to Milton, who in typical Harley fashion, who's Milton? So I think that's kind of the message, if there is a message to take out of here. It's that even the friendless the people who think they are friendless and unfriendable can find friends. Um,
No one's alone.
and in that case, it's a little anime. It's a little Madoka Magica here.
Yeah, found family, absolutely.
Found family and friendship is magic, and a lot of people die. So yeah, it's Madoka. Um,
Yeah.
with actually Harley is wearing a frilled dress. I was gonna say with less frilled dresses, but then I look at Harley's wedding dress. It's like, oh, okay, never mind.
Oh snap! Harley's a magical girl.
That's it. Harley is pretty much a magical girl, at least in her own head. All right. So that being said, recommendation and 1 out of 10. What do you give it?
Well, I mean, I'm sure as hell gonna recommend it because it's a fun time. I'd give it an 8 out of 10.
Yeah. All right. I think I think that's pretty much where I would be. I'm trying to think if it's a 7 or an 8 for me. I think I'm gonna be a little harder on it than you. I think I'm gonna give it a 7.
Fair enough.
Because of the whole Harley story pacing thing, and the fact that James Gunn can make and has made movies with an immense amount of heart, and this just doesn't have it. Even Suicide Squad, as clumsy as they tried to make it, had at its emotional core the relationship between Deadshot and his daughter and Flag and June Moon or Enchantress, and Diablo and his pain about his whole family. That movie at least had on paper more of an emotional core than this one does, and got it screwed up. So 7 out of 10 for me. All right, folks, that's it. That is our show. Thank you for being in the chat, Luminous in particular, and anybody else who was in there or who's watching live and didn't want to jump into the chat. Coming up, No Nerd Caliber, oddly enough, will be our favorite comic book anti-heroes. Our top 3 favorite comic book anti-heroes. Then, of course, we have Nerd Week Live, which is our nerd news roundup show, and that's on Tuesday. And then on Thursday, we have the next Full Fat Spoiler Chat, which is what? Tell me, Byron, tell me. It is Bad Batch.
Oh yeah, I was just about to guess that.
Which means I better get on it because I've only watched like 5 episodes and they're 20 something in.
What are you doing?
So I hope you'll catch us at one of those shows. The 8 o'clock always, on each of the nights that they're on, Eastern time. Byron, give us a goodbye.
Byron McNeil, aka Byron D0, telling you to tip your bartenders, be good to each other, wash your hands, wear a mask, and check me out on YouTube at Byron D0. That's BYRONDZERO.
Awesome.
Good night.
Yes, and if you do tip your bartender, do it at a bar where they force you to wear a mask, and maybe even show your vaccination. So yeah, stay safe, folks. Please wear a mask. Please, please, please wear a mask. Texas cities, Houston, because this is affecting children, folks. The infection rate in children is going through the roof compared to the non-Delta variant. Houston is about to run out of pediatric ICU beds. Now, this isn't a joke. It's no more of a joke than the first round was. Get vaccinated, wear a mask, please. Anyway, having said that, we hope to see you at one of the upcoming shows. And I'm Rodney Brown. You heard all my introductions before. And we'll see you again. Stay safe. Stay cool. Those of us who here on the greater Boston area, we're still in the upper 80s at almost 9 o'clock.